Hello and welcome to freephotoshop.com and this week's tutorial on image size and resolution. And these two factors come into play regardless of what we're actually doing and what we're actually working on. It could be a digital photograph, an image you've scanned in, or even an image you've created yourself inside of Photoshop. Knowing how to work with pixels will improve the finished product no matter what you're actually working with. Now, as you can see, I've got this image open on screen entitled Needles Overlook Small.psd, which is a photograph taken from Needles Overlook in Utah. And if we take a look at the bottom left corner of the document pane, you can see that we're looking at this image at the 100% view size, meaning that we have one image pixel represented by one screen pixel. And next to the view size stat, we've got our image size and resolution information. And if you can't see it on screen, then click this little arrow here and you can choose the info you'd like to display. Obviously I've got mine set to document size. Now what this is telling us is the total size of our image in pixels. So this particular image is 600 pixels wide by 450 pixels high, giving us a total of around about 270,000 pixels in all. Not very many on the scale of digital photography though. That's equivalent to 0.25 megapixels in the land of digital cameras. So if we'd taken the photograph on a 5 megapixel camera, we could expect to see around about 5 million pixels here. We also have this resolution value, which tells us how many pixels we have inside each inch of the image. So in this case we have a value of 300 pixels per inch, and that inch, by the way, is a square inch, so it measures 300 pixels high by 300 pixels wide, giving us a total value of 90,000 pixels contained within each square inch of this image. Now the most important thing to understand about resolution is that this only comes into play when printing the image, so whilst we're viewing them working on screen with it, it doesn't matter at all what the actual resolution is. And just to demonstrate, I'm going to close this image to reveal two separate images in the background. The one on the left is called Needles Overlook 72 ppi, and the one on the right is called Needles Overlook 300 ppi. And I'm going to go ahead and zoom into the 72 ppi version, and I'm going to set the zoom to around about 700% down here, and just move the window pane so we can see the figure on the rock, and that looks pretty good just about there. Now I'm going to come over here to the window menu and click Arrange, and then choose Match Zoom and Location, and you can see that the two photographs now look identical, and that's primarily because they are, well, at least they are on screen. Now I'm going to bring over the info palette, which you can open if needed via the Windows menu at the top, and tagged onto the bottom here is our size and resolution values. Just another way of checking out these values here inside of Photoshop. And if you're not seeing the same info as I am, then you can click this little arrow which opens up the wing menu and select palette options from there and choose which information you'd like to see. Okay, if I activate the 72 ppi image, we can see that the actual size of the image is 2592 by 1944 pixels, giving us a total of just over 5 million pixels to work with. Now if I activate the 300 ppi image, we're going to see 2592 by 1944 pixels, or 5 million pixels in total. So on screen there's absolutely no difference between the quality of the two images. It's only when we start looking at printing them it becomes an issue. I'm going to reactivate the 72 ppi image and then come up here to the image menu and select image size. And a very handy shortcut for opening the image size dialog box on Windows, by the way, is to hit Ctrl-Alt-I. Now what we have here is a dialog box that acts as the nerve center basically of our image sizing controls. So up here at the top we have our actual image size, so we can see the familiar 2592 by 1944 pixels, which is the actual size of the image in pixels. And we also get to see the file size of the document, right here at the top here. And if that figure looks a little too large, then remember that this is the uncompressed size of the image, which will look a lot larger if the file you imported was a JPEG, for example. In the midsection here we've got our document size, which used to be called the print size, and I'm not really sure why it's been changed to document size, because calling it print size sure made it a lot easier to understand, but that's how we're going to think of it here inside of Photoshop. After all, this is the size of the document that will print, subject to the resolution value we enter down here. Now if you click the drop down menu buttons, you can change the unit of measurement that's displayed, and that's because we're dealing with resolution in pixels per inch. And I'm going to make sure my document measuring is done in inches too, just to keep things straightforward. Now it's important to understand that all of these 5 figures are related. We have an image that's 2592 by 1944 pixels, and if we want to print this document out in a format that's 72 pixels per inch, then we're going to get a resulting document of 36 inches by 27. That's the actual size once printed. Now I want you to remember 36 by 27, and I'm going to cancel out of here, and then I'm going to activate the 300 ppi image and then hit Ctrl-Alt-I on the keyboard to open up the image size info again. And I'm going to make sure the document size is visible in inches so we can compare it to the last version. Now we can see that the image at 300 ppi is going to print out a lot smaller, 8.5 inches by 6.5 to be more accurate, and that's because we're now taking all of the pixels, so that's still 2592 by 1944, and squeezing in 300 pixels per inch, which gives us the overall print size of the document. So the resolution of the image determines the quality of the print. The higher the resolution, the better results you'll get. I'm going to close this dialog box here just for a second, and I'm going to bring over this document entitled dimensions.psd, and I'm going to make sure we're viewing this document at the 100% view size so we can see all of it on the screen. And what we've got here is a resolution, or 4 resolution values that are generally conceived as being the standard print values for their respective tasks. So first we have the 72 and 96 pixels per inch presets, which are generally considered the standard for most computer screens. Now 5184 pixels for the 72 ppi resolution, as an example, may seem like a lot, and it is for viewing on a monitor, but if you're wanting to print the image out, you're really going to be struggling with this amount of pixels, or dots as the printer would interpret them as. If you decide to print an image at this resolution, you're not going to get the appearance of real life. Instead, you'll find it produces jagged edges and the effect known as banding within transitions of colour. In order to print an image to a good standard, you're going to need a resolution of around about 300 pixels per inch, which equals 90,000 pixels in every square inch of your photograph. Finally, if you're printing line art, you're going to want a resolution of around about 600 pixels per inch, which is a massive 360,000 pixels in each square inch of your image. And 600 ppi for line art is a minimum, would you believe? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and minimize this image, and then I'm going to close the 300 ppi version of the Needles Overlook photograph I took, and then I'm going to adjust the 72 ppi version so we can see all of it on screen, and I'm just going to set this to 25% view size. Okay, that looks good. I'm going to hit Ctrl-Alt-I once again to bring up the image size dialog box, and you can see that the information before your eyes is exactly as it was just a few moments ago. We've got an image that's going to print to 36 inches across and 27 inches high, which is for most purposes unnecessarily big, but if we did want to print at this size, then we're only going to be printing at 72 pixels per inch, which, as we discussed a few moments earlier, isn't going to be good enough for a photographic image. So what we're going to need to do is to resize the image. Now, first of all, I need to make sure that we have the Constrain Proportions option ticked, and that's going to keep our image at the correct ratio. In other words, when I change the height value, the width value will change proportionally, and vice versa. Now I'm going to change the resolution value from 72 to 300 pixels per inch, but for some reason the document size hasn't changed. We're still looking at the document that measures 36 by 27 inches, but if we look above that at the actual pixel dimensions, instead of having 2592 pixels by 1944, we've now got 10,800 pixels by 8,100 pixels, and our overall image size has shot up from 14.4 megabytes to over 250 megabytes, which is absolutely massive. Now if we take a look at the bottom here, we've got an option called Resample Image, and when we made our change to the resolution value, we left this option ticked. So what Photoshop's done is resampled the image by creating new pixels to fill the gaps. Now I'm not going to go into any detail here on resampling, but if there's one thing you'll want to stay away from, it's upsampling, which means adding pixels to an image. But we'll take another look at that in more detail in another tutorial. Now I'm going to hold down the Alt key to change the Cancel button into a Reset button, and then go ahead and reset the changes we've made. Then I'm going to go ahead and untick the Resample Image option, and once again change the resolution from 72 ppi to 300. This time the pixel dimension boxes are greyed out so we can't change them, and the new resolution value I've entered has only affected the document size. I'm going to go ahead and click OK to change, or to accept the changes I should say, and once again we can see no visual difference in the image itself. We haven't gained or lost any pixels at all, but we have told Photoshop that when it comes time for printing, and the key word here is printing, we want those pixels to be tightly packed within a smaller printing area. We want 90,000 pixels in each square inch of the image to be exactly precise. Now I'm going to go back to basics for a moment here before we summarise what we've looked at, and just concentrate a little more on view size. Now we've set this image up to a view size of 25%, and I'm going to change it to 100%, so every screen pixel we have is now representing a pixel in the actual image, and as I said before, this is the best view size to make any pixel based adjustments at, because we're now seeing every pixel the image has to offer. If I change the view size to 50%, we're now only seeing 50% of the image pixels. So if we're looking at a photograph taken on a 5 megapixel camera, we're going to be missing 2.5 million pixels in all. The good thing about this view size is that it's a round number relative to 100. So if we're viewing an image at 25, 50, 75%, then we're making it easy for Photoshop to calculate which pixels to reveal and which pixels to hide. If we go ahead and view our image at 33.83%, then we're going to see a distorted representation of the image on the screen. Okay, I'm going to bring up another document onto the screen here just to recap some of the points we've talked about in this tutorial. So image size is a measurement of how many pixels are contained within the image. Document size is a measurement of how big the image will actually print. And resolution is how many pixels are contained within each square inch of the image. The important thing about resolution is that it only applies when printing a document and doesn't indicate at all how many pixels we've got inside the actual image. Well, I hope you found this tutorial on freephotoshop.com to be helpful. Thanks very much for watching.